Boy, a title like that probably requires a qualifier, yeah? Well, rest assured, I'm not claiming the show is secretly a romance anime. Rather, I actually want to talk about love as a theme in the show, since love is the primary motivation for each of the main characters. It's something I've been thinking about a lot since I started watching, and since my patrons voted on this and nobody's thought to take my microphone away, I'm making it your problem. Before I start though, I need to specify that I'll only really be talking about the anime for this video. Normally I'd read the manga too, but I've been watching the anime with my friend, and our weekly get together to watch a new episode has just become something I really look forward to, so I don't really feel like reading ahead. So aside from a couple of things, I won't be touching the manga at all, and if that's a problem for you for some reason, I don't know what to tell you, make your own video. I'd actually like to politely request you keep your manga comments to yourself for now, as I'd really like to enjoy the show at my own pace. As for everyone else, let's get started, shall we? It's time to talk about why Dungeon Meshi is my favourite love story. Also, spoilers ahead, obviously. So, for a quick summary, Dungeon Meshi starts with a total party wipe, as told from the perspective of Laios Touden, droopy-eyed, generic-looking human fighter type. They're called Tallman in the show, but you fucking know what I mean. And main-ish character, as he spaces out in the middle of fighting a dragon because he's thinking about burgers or something, leading to his sister Falin sacrificing herself to save him from the dragon's bite attack and then casting an evacuation spell on the rest of the party. Realising that she didn't make it out with them, and hurting from the fact that they not only left all of their supplies back down that flaming hellscape, but are also down 2 party members who immediately quit, Laios resolves to traverse the dungeon and slay the dragon to save his sister before she's digested, joined by the elven mage Marcille because she loves Falin, and the half-foot Chilchuck because he was prepaid and is a professional, and no other reason. Laios announces they'll be eating monsters to make up for their lack of time and supplies. Marcille offers a poignant counter-argument.
That's gross! Ew, no, I don't wanna!
And they're shortly joined by Senshi, monster cook extraordinaire and benevolent provider of fan service. And the rest is history. The show follows an episodic format, usually involving being attacked by a monster in some manner, stabbing, slicing or blowing it up, and then cooking it into something delicious in the dungeon. It's delicious in the dungeon. Do you get it? That's the title. Do you get? So with the overarching narrative being they trek back down to the dragon's lair, each episode acts as another step forward into the journey to rescue Falin, allowing them to act as indicators of progress. Mostly. There are also times, like with the fucking living paintings, where progress slows to a crawl. It happens. It's slow progress, but they eventually make it back to the dragon, slay it, resurrect her, and then everything is fine forever. Denial is just a river in Egypt, why do you ask? While I'll be breaking down the characters individually, I do want to reiterate that Dungeon Meshi is, at its core, a story about love, and indeed we glimpse many different forms of love throughout the story. It can even be argued that each of the main characters represents a different form of love, but I'm getting ahead of myself. As I said, love is the primary motivating factor for the main characters' decisions, and I personally find it fascinating to explore. A twisted, maniacal love for Delgol is even the main motivation of the Mad Mage, an elf who watched the man he was raised with die and decide he would never lose anyone again, devoting himself to dark magic until he could curse his kingdom with immortality, at the cost of them slowly losing touch with what makes you human to begin with, all out of a deranged, possessive need to never lose anyone again. Or at least that's how I'm interpreting it so far. I think love is about as universal a motivation as can exist, because the number of motivations that find their root in love are uncountable. Just in the main group we have familial love, the love of friends, arguably romantic love, a pure universal love, and most recently self-love. It's Laios and Marcille's love for Falin that drives them to delve back into the dungeon in the first place. And it's Chilchuck's love for his friends, which he'll never admit to, go fuck yourselves, that drives him to help them, despite the danger. It's this love for each other, and also Laios fucking up big time, that kicks off the plot in the first place, and each character is changed by love over the course of the show. Another important theme is connection and understanding. Each of the characters struggles with one of these in one form or another, and how it's addressed is actually intrinsically linked to their character arcs, especially Chilchuck's. But yeah, that's enough for the introduction. Let's get started on the characters, shall we? Starting with... You really can't talk about Laios without talking about his perceived autism. And I say perceived because, to the best of my knowledge, Ryoka Kui hasn't gone on record to canonize him as being on the autism spectrum yet. That said, there are a great deal of fans, myself included, who see him as being heavily autistic coded. And I am the person who made an entire video on the importance of autistic headcanons, so I'll be treating him as if he is autistic for the duration of the video. And I'll come back to this topic in a bit, so just be patient while I sort my thoughts out. As a character, Laios is driven by 3 primary motivations after the opening dragon incident: rescuing his sister, the safety of his friends, and his monster mania. Indeed, it can be very hard to tell which of the 3 he actually prioritizes at any given time, but it can never be denied that they are his top priorities. I think Laios' relationships with his party members is one of his most interesting facets, as he shows remarkable care and respect for each of them, though it's not always readily apparent. The most obvious is Senshi, whose cooking skills he practically worships, and who he clearly gets along with the easiest, as they share the same fascination with eating monsters. I mentioned in my anime recommendations video that they have a sort of destined to be friends vibe, and Senshi is obviously the most compatible with Laios outside of Falin. Of course, Laios respects Senshi's knowledge just as much, if not more than his cooking skills, and despite his own hyperfixated knowledge on monsters, he usually steps back and refers to Senshi whenever the subject of actually eating monsters comes up. Usually.
Laios, seems you managed to catch a parasite from eating a giant parasite.
Make no mistake though, Laios is definitely the most knowledgeable on monsters as a whole, and this knowledge is his biggest contribution to the party. In fact, Laios seems well aware of the fact that he doesn't really have much to contribute to the party as far as specializations go. He's not as strong as Shuro, he doesn't have the weapon or magic skills of Namari or Marcille, and he's nowhere near as perceptive or roguey as Chilchuck. And that actually leads to one of his more interesting character traits: respect and deference to expertise. Laios will, almost without question, place his trust and respect in the expertise of those around him. When it comes to magic, he stands in rapt attention to Marcille. When it comes to Chilchuck's job, he stands back and does everything he's told, and it's actually this level of respect that makes his professional relationship with Chilchuck so stable. But more on that later. Even when Namari reappears in the dungeon after leaving the party, he immediately defers to her knowledge on weapons and armor and shows complete and utter trust in her capabilities.
It's too dangerous. Don't do this. You can't put all of your trust into revival magic.
I'm not. The thing I'm putting my trust into here is you and Senshi.
Despite his generally friendly and trusting nature and his role as the leader though, Laios struggles greatly in social situations. This is where we get back into the topic of autism, because for a lot of fans, myself included, Laios is the fucking poster child for the unintentionally autistic coded character. At least I'm assuming it was unintentional, since that tends to be the case. Monster obsession aside, Laios routinely fails his way through social interactions. He doesn't pick up on social cues, he infodumps, he talks with his hands quite a bit, and it can be argued he tends to stim, and he only really seems to come alive when the topic of monsters arises. Actually, he's a lot like Falin in that he tends to speak in a softer voice, again with the exception of when talking about monsters. His autistic tendencies tend to mostly be played for laughs, such as comedically missing the point when Chilchuck and Marcille are against eating demi-humans, or when trying to convince people that it's actually okay to eat monsters, and he really just doesn't understand why people would be so against it. This rings especially true for Marcille. When I made my ramble where I theorized which of the shapeshifters came from whose mind, it was confirmed by people who actually read the manga that the cooler Marcille came from Laios, and it confirmed for me how he thinks her monster eating issues should work.
I don't like it, but I've already eaten fishmen, eggs, and dryads, so why bother complaining now?
The way he sees it, she should already be past the squick factor of monster consumption because she's already done it enough. He really can't comprehend the idea that she might still have hang-ups. However, I seriously need to stress that this does not mean Laios doesn't pay attention to people at all. He misses the small details of appearances, and he presupposes his own logic onto people, though everybody is guilty of that. But he does pay attention to people's behaviour. He ultimately deduced the correct 3 by paying attention to Chilchuck's mimic avoidant habits, Senshi's care for the ecosystem, and Marcel's general tendency to get caught up in her emotions and not think things through. Oh yeah, and then there's that whole thing with Shuro.
Why not say something sooner? What's the point in telling me now? If it was so hard to be around me, you should have told me back then so I knew!
I tried to let you know in ways that most people would have picked up on. Maybe you should get better at reading the room, Laios.
How, Shuro? I'd finally made my very first friend on the island. Did you expect me not to be excited about it?
This part hits especially hard for me. and it's ultimately what really cemented Laios' autism for me, because I've been him so many times. Reading people is hard, and a lot of people refuse to fucking say what they're feeling. I've actually made a habit of, whenever I make a new friend or get a new coworker or just generally am going to be spending a lot of time with someone, informing them that I am autistic and all but begging them to immediately bring up any issues they might have with my behaviour or words, no matter how small, because I can guarantee I will not recognise when something I've said or done is a problem until after the fact. And I am so very tired of people bottling up all their tiny problems with me until they explode and I just have no idea why. Fun fact, my friend was apparently fighting the urge to just stare at me through this entire scene. It sucks to get called out like that, but what can you do? Autism, it happens. Moving on to the subject of love, Laios is mainly characterised by two, Storge and Mania. Mania, also known as obsessive love, obviously refers to his love of monsters, something I actually find really interesting. Monsters are obviously his special interest, and he hyperfixates on them to an absurd degree, but his love for them is, in a strange sense, very pure. He doesn't attempt to excuse their actions, nor does he allow his love for them to cloud his perception of them. Laios is fully aware of the dangers that monsters possess, even more so than Senshi, who full on lives in the dungeon.
I'm against this. If we used its organs as a life preserver, it'd be more useful.
That's awful!
I can't believe he just said that.
All monsters are dangerous. Friendly ones are no exception. Kelpies try to lower your guard to coax you into the water. You never know a monster's true intentions.
Like I said, it's a very pure love, from a certain point of view. He doesn't want them to change or be seen as anything other than what they are. He simply appreciates them, though appreciates is a fairly tame word. Also, and this is a slight tangent, but can people stop fucking treating Laios like he's entirely ignorant of sex because he's autistic? And I'm not talking about the people who headcanon him as asexual, because that's a completely valid interpretation. I'm talking about the people who fucking infantilize him and other autistic characters, and even real-life autistic people, and treat us as if we're literal children when it comes to the topic of sex. It's disrespectful and highly ableist. Whether or not you think Laios fucks, which I do because eat shit, it cannot be denied that he understands monster mating habits. He's the guy who gushed about how man-eating plants reproduce. He's the guy who knew about dryad life cycles, and he's the fucking mad lad who figured out how living armor works and immediately went, oh hey, those two were holding hands, I bet they were fucking. Seriously, this dude knows how biology works. Anyway, back on topic, the other primary form of love he demonstrates is Storge, or familial love. Indeed, his love for his sister is the core motivating factor for the post-nomming plot. Laios wants to rescue his sister, and that remains true even after she gets turned into a chimera by the angry wizard over here. I'll actually have more to say about this when I talk about Falin herself, but for now, I think it's important to mention that the siblings' love for each other is honestly really beautiful. I really like seeing healthy sibling relationships in media, and I wish we could see more of it. I do have a big criticism of Laios' character, but I'm saving it for the end with two other big issues I have. That's about all I have to say about Laios for the moment. Everything else is in relation to other characters, so we might as well just get to them now. Well, except for the dog thing.
This is why dreams are the best.
This boy is a fucking furry. Too bad his self-image doesn't match up to what he's really like.
Fuel yourself with the fear of losing that somebody who's your reason to live. Harness your heart and you can't help choosing to fight with all you can give.
I think there's an important distinction to make between loving someone and being in love with them. Because when it comes to Marcille, there are a lot of people, myself included, who interpret her as being in love with Falin romantically. I really don't think the series is actually going to go that route, realistically speaking, but that hardly matters. Whether or not you think Marcille is in love with Falin, there's absolutely no denying that she does love her. Her love for Falin is her primary driving motivation, and it's one of the reasons she's my favourite character. I adore characters whose primary motivation is their devotion to another person, and Marcille is nothing if not defined by her devotion. With Falin out of the picture, Marcille becomes the only spellcaster of the party, and it's a role she takes very seriously. It's revealed that she feels really down when she can't be of help. And this is something that's only increased as she's been forced to try to fill in for Falin until they can get her back. The party actually relies on her for quite a bit, for everything from combat to protection to water walking to healing. She's really great at healing, you guys.
Transum luna estantinus, eulicanto unzu.
He's suffering more than before.
She's also genuinely the funniest character, and despite her, quirks,
I'll give them all a gentle embrace. A gentle embrace of explosions.
No.
Gentle
No.
explosions.
No!
I'm going all out! Everyone, prepare for battle!
What the hell is she doing now?
Her best, or something close.
Mushroom foot sniffer.
she also feels the most human, ironically. Marcille is also the only one to have any real issues with the whole eating monsters thing, which acts as a vehicle for her character growth. The thing about Marcille is, despite her dislike of monster food, she eats it for the sake of finding Falin, and we can see her slowly becoming more okay with it, or at least less distressed by it, throughout the course of the story. A big point of character development actually comes from her being the one to suggest cooking for once. When she accidentally pisses off an Undyne and falls low on both health and mana, the group tries to send her back to the surface for her own safety, and the idea of being forced to leave while Falin still needs rescuing is absolutely crushing to her, which leads to her suggesting they eat the Undyne to help her regain her mana. This is the same girl who, not 3 days earlier, had been upset by the idea of eating the basilisk. It's an important turning point for her, and while she still struggles with eating monsters to a point, it's a good indicator of growth. I also want to stress that Marcille's reluctance to eat monsters is actually perfectly understandable. Hell, she even explains it herself.
Monsters are believed to be unclean, and it's obviously not entirely logical, but that's the reason most people, including me, find it gross. You just get this feeling that you'll absorb something bad. New diseases spring up from creatures coming in contact with humans all the time, so it's not fair to question why someone doesn't feel like eating monsters.
I'd honestly liken it to the first time I tried liver. I'd spent my entire life refusing to touch the stuff because it's the literal poison filter for another living being, and it just felt wrong to try to eat that. And Marcille's thing is simply an exaggerated version of that. Her problem is that she's the only sane woman in this party of clowns for most of the anime so far, and so she's treated like the problem just because she has a few actually understandable hang-ups.
Big bats and giant rats.
I'm not eating unhygienic things.
Forest goblins.
Same with demi-humans.
Living armor?
Metal. That's it? There's nothing normal? Aren't there birds or fruit?
Come on, Marcille, you need more iron in your diet. I did end up eating that liver, by the way. Fucking hated it. Hated everything about it. But that's really beside the point. Setting aside the idea of romantic love for now, Marcille most strongly demonstrates philia, which is a deep, abiding friendship, and pragma, which is an enduring love. Marcille's devotion isn't limited to Falin, and it actually extends to all the people she loves in her life. It's just that her friendship with Falin is the most important to her. Marcille actually cares very deeply for the people around her, and we can see this in the small interactions she has with people, like how she tries to help Senshi stay hygienic and offers to walk with Chilchuck to refill his water skin in the middle of the night. Honestly, Marcille's friendships with the party are a joy to behold, especially her friendship with Laios. The times where their interests intersect are few and far between, but watching them geek out of the dungeon cleaners and bond over how much they miss Falin is really nice. Plus, the joy and pride in her eyes when she manages to teach him the basics of healing magic is honestly just so heartwarming. And when they work together to take down the griffin, well, oh, that was just amazing. My favourite part of their relationship is that while Laios remembers himself as a cool wolf in the dream, she sees him as a dopey, friendly dog, which just about encapsulates her feelings on him. He may do distressing things at times, but she's happy to have him as a friend. And then of course there's the black magic. Marcille has spent her time studying ways to utilise black magic for the good of everyone, just as she's spent time studying the dungeons to utilise them for the good of everyone. And it's only thanks to this that they're able to rescue Falin. The first time, I mean. It also really goes to show just how much she cares for Falin, as she's willing to engage in forbidden magic just to see her again. Hot girl summer bitches, let's blaspheme against God. There's just something really romantic about undoing the narrative doom of someone you love through forbidden blood-soaked sacrament, you know? And their reunion hug definitely made me tear up a little. The whole scene was just really well done. Unfortunately, and Marcille had no way of knowing this would happen, she accidentally fused the dragon soul with Falin's, and the guilt of that is eating her from the inside out. This also ties into her deepest fear, being ultimately left alone when the people around her die. Marcille's father was a human, and she had to watch him age and die, which is why the monster conjured up by the nightmare inflicts first senescence. She sadly has to live with the fact that she'll likely outlive all the people she loves, so the knowledge that her own actions have damned Falin to a cursed existence must weigh especially heavy on her. Still, she's legitimately one of the sweetest characters, and while I don't know how the Chimera issue is resolved, I hope it brings her some level of comfort. No spoilers in the comments, thank you very much. Also, for everyone's sake, I really hope they get Falin back soon, because when it comes to healing, well, let's just say Marcille is not a gentle lover.
You did great, Izutsumi.
The healing spell hurt more than breaking it.
Oof. Godspeed, girl boss.
Straight up, what did you hope to learn about here? If I was someone else, would this all fall apart? Strange, where were you when we started this gig? I wish the real world would just stop asking me.
This man's entire problem is that he cannot handle the mortifying ordeal of being known. I'm not even kidding, Chilchuck would have a much easier time with everyone if he could just be honest about his own feelings, but that just doesn't happen unless he's forced to. I'll be honest, I don't have as much to say about Chilchuck as I do with Laios and Marcille, and that's because thus far in the anime, he's mostly just been the guy that's there. He mostly just goes along with the party and snarks and keeps secrets because he just isn't comfortable sharing his feelings or personal details. Oh, and he insults people a lot. He's big on insults.
Damn it! The common language doesn't have enough curse words! Ponza! Valo!
Please, don't cuss at me in a language I don't speak, Chilchuck.
That isn't to say I don't like him though. I actually really enjoy the sense of practicality he brings to the party dynamic. As the rogue, Chilchuck is under constant stress due to it being his job to keep people alive, and half the time the party has the survival instincts of meth-addled lemmings. And you know, this wouldn't be a problem if Chilchuck just didn't care about his friends. But he does. The entire reason he's in the dungeon is that he cares about his friends. Sure, he makes the excuse that he was already paid, but that isn't fooling anyone. He says it himself, he's terrified that they'll die.
Someone's gonna die. Laios, I'm begging you. Can you hold off and return to the surface? I really don't want to lose you guys.
He's been given ample opportunity to abandon them multiple times, but he always stays, and he always comes through for them, because he knows they'd be utterly fucked without him, because he has the skills they need. He has the experience and the heightened senses required to get them out of trouble. I think his relationship with Laios is the most interesting, because, like I said before, it's a really good working relationship. While Laios has issues and Chilchuck is always willing to insult him,
Seriously, why didn't you say something?
Because Chill would just yell at me and tell me I'm sick in the head.
That's because you are.
Laios' trust in him is very obviously appreciated. And Laios is the only one who doesn't expect Chilchuck to fight and never once puts pressure on him to do so. His relationship with Marcille is a little bit more antagonistic, and it honestly makes him come across as like her pissy little brother. But he does care, and he tends to act as the voice of reason, not just for her, but the party as a whole. He is, weirdly enough, the most level-headed member of the group, and he acts as something of a grounding influence for her, usually by reminding her of her own limits. And as far as relationship with Senshi,
What even is this? Prejudice against dwarfs? Yeah, come on, Senshi doesn't look that dopey.
Senshi is handsome.
yeah, he's not beating those old man yaoi allegations. All I'll say for now. Yeah, that's basically all I've got for him right now. Do needs to learn to open up more, and I look forward to when he inevitably does. Okay, yeah, so it turns out I was right. In the middle of writing the script, episode 22 dropped, and Chilchuck actually volunteered information on himself to help coax Senshi into talking about himself as well. And let me tell you, this was fucking amazing. This is character development, baby. Okay, now we're moving on.
Eating a midnight breakfast, whatever comes next.
Beans will still be there.
Eating a midnight breakfast, whatever comes next.
Bread!
Okay, got it out of my system. Senshi is, I think, one of the more interesting takes on the all-loving hero archetype, though I wouldn't necessarily classify him as a hero, so much as I would say he's the living embodiment of the concept of agape. Agape, or love for everyone, is characterized as a nearly spiritual kind of love involving enormous empathy. Because agape often involves the concepts of charity and sacrifice, it's sometimes thought of as the highest form of love, specifically in Christianity. And while I'm not saying that Senshi is basically Dungeon Jesus,
oh happy day.
well, I'm not saying it either. In all seriousness, Senshi is almost entirely defined by his selfless nature. His very first appearance involves him seeing strangers struggling with cooking and offering to help, and it only continues from there. Senshi is especially interesting because, unlike the other core members of the party, he has no personal stakes in the story. He doesn't know Falin, he isn't friends with Marcille and Laios like Chilchuck is, and he isn't driven by self-gratification like Izutsumi. Sure, he says he's dreamed of eating the red dragon, but that's basically a side note. Senshi's motivations are entirely altruistic, and nearly without a hint of self-interest, and that makes him utterly fascinating. Senshi naturally takes on the role of a caregiver within the party, and while that primarily takes the form of cooking, it doesn't actually stop there. His attempts to teach Chilchuck about the pistols and stamens.
You're probably at the age where you're gonna start showing interest in certain things, so you're gonna need to have some good knowledge about them.
What's that mean?
Let's just say that humans also have a stamen and pistol.
You're talking to a grown-ass man, Senshi, and his insistence on showing Izutsumi the proper way to hold eating utensils demonstrates his near obsession with caring for those he considers to be youngsters. Ironically, Marcille is physically 60 and Chilchuck is mentally equivalent to 50, which only makes this...
Don't look! Oh, excuse us.
all the funnier, and also exceptionally tragic if you actually know his backstory. Senshi is also fairly odd for a dwarf, as he has no skills in smithing or mining and no interest in treasure. Really, his only interest is in helping people and maintaining the dungeon, both of which he takes to with admirable gusto. And you know, I really think it's his selfless nature that's made him such a positive influence on people IRL. Statistically speaking, if you're watching the show, then there's a high chance Senshi will appear in your mind and gently remind you to take care of yourself. And people have reported their lives changing just a little bit for the better for having him there. Honestly, completely ignoring the fact that he's the only one who actually knows how to cook, I think the party desperately needed Senshi. Without him, I don't think anyone would be concerned enough about the physical and mental well-being of its members. Everyone needs to be taken care of sometimes, whether you're an adult or not, and Senshi is just proof of how important that is. Plus, he guards the restaurant fan service. Thank you for your service, Dungeon Dad. Okay, I know that in the manga, Izutsumi has been part of the story for longer than not, but in the anime she's literally only been around for about 4 episodes at time of writing, and for the bulk of one of those episodes she was relegated to just being a cat, so she hasn't had much time to really make an impact. That said, what impact she has had has been really good. I actually find her inclusion into the cast intriguing, as at first glance, she almost seems fundamentally incompatible with both the themes of the show and the rest of the party. Izutsumi is a self-centered, combative brat and a massively picky eater. She's introduced proper by holding Marcille hostage, demanding food, and then proceeding to throw what Senshi makes onto the ground. She spends most of her screen time being an abrasive bitch for no discernible reason, and she's really just kind of all around unpleasant for the first 3 episodes she's on screen. At face value, there's really no reason to like her. Of course, we're not just looking at face value, are we? Because Izutsumi is far more complicated than that, and for very good reasons. Let's get the big thing out of the way. Izutsumi was a slave. There's no nuance there. She was literally cursed with a collar that would kill her if she ran away, and she clearly didn't want to be there, and she was transformed against her will. She was a slave, and she grew up only being shown any level of care by Toudai, who was also either a slave or a servant to Toshio's family. And she had to grow to be self-centered because she was the only one who was really going to look out for herself. And yes, I know Shuro referred to her and the rest of the group as family, but he also proposed to Falin with zero warning or build-up. He's clearly not entirely synced up with reality. Izutsumi represents Philautia, or self-love, and she's kind of the only person who really demonstrates it, or at least to any notable degree. Many other characters are preoccupied with either Falin or another ally of some sort, and so Izutsumi comes off as comparatively selfish. However, Izutsumi is in the fairly interesting position of being the only one capable of learning to put others first, which cannot happen until she learns that others will put her first as well. Something I haven't really seen talked about when it comes to Izutsumi is that she's very clearly an abuse victim, more specifically a victim of abandonment and neglect. And the thing about being an abuse survivor is that for a time after escaping it, you instinctively see every extended hand as a raised fist because you've been conditioned to expect mistreatment from other people. And this is exactly the kind of behaviour we see from her at first, as she acts in the interest of self-preservation. She threatens the party to get their help because she doesn't believe anyone would help her of their own volition. The treatment she went through is also why she has absolutely no issue with being seen naked, because she's had to deal with being dehumanized for so long that she believes that due to her cursed body, nobody could or would view her as a person. And now that she's free of her collar, I believe that her character arc will involve learning to trust others enough to be unselfish. She has to begin to believe that people will be willing to treat her like a person in order to treat them with any level of respect, because many of her habits were formed in response to the incredibly cruel situation she found herself in. This is actually the reason that Senshi is going to be so important to her character growth, as I believe his tendency to dad is going to be the catalyst for this process. He's already shown her more care than she's ever received back in the East, and it'll only continue from there. I mean, it's also possible that I'm overthinking this and I'm completely off base about where the story is going with her. I guess we'll find out. Also, I've seen a reoccurring interpretation that half of her issues stem from the fact that she's a teenage girl, though I find that kind of reading just a bit condescending. All I know is that she's perfect and I love her.
You're an asshole too. I'm talking about you. Talking about you. I'm talking about you and you. You're an asshole too.
Honestly, I think Shuro gets something of a bad rap. I don't have a lot to say about him, but I did want to get my feelings out real quick before I move on to more interesting characters. I think the fandom is a little too determined to hate on him and ultimately for doing very little wrong. People call him ableist after his fight with Laios and shit on him because if they shit Marcille and Falin and he was kind of in the way of that in the backstory. But honestly, Shuro isn't that bad. He came across to me as someone who's had to learn social etiquette the hard way. And while I don't read him as being autistic necessarily, I do sympathise with him. And unlike Namari, he didn't actually abandon Falin when he left the party. He simply thought, okay, we need more competent people on this, and went to beg his family for help. I've also seen a lot of people villainise him for getting angry about the black magic resurrection thing, but let's be honest, the dude was fucking exhausted and pushed way past the breaking point, and his worry that the repercussions could harm Falin in the long run were actually valid. He's not a bad guy, he was just in a bad way. The fact that he not only decided to not report the party, but also gave them the bell to help them escape to the east speaks volumes on the kind of man he is. People seriously need to stop villainising him. Also, I don't want it to sound like I don't think Namari cares about Falin's or the party's safety. She very much does. Her visit to the Resurrections office and the fact she ultimately aided in neutralising the Undine are proof of that. It's just that she literally cannot afford to be reckless about whose party she's in. Yeah, that's all I've got for these two. Moving on.
You're a loser, baby, a loser, goddamn baby, you're a fucked up little whiny bitch. Hey.
Okay, I'm just gonna rip the bandage right off for this one. I don't like Kabru. Like, at all. I don't like his manipulative tendencies. I don't like his fucking obsession with proving the Touden siblings are terrible, awful, no good, very bad people based on... Let me check my notes. Ah, yes. The fact that they gave former party members money and those party members fucked off and became huge assholes. Something that literally neither Falin nor Laios have any control over. I don't like this murderous little twat in the least. And I'm sorry if he's your favourite little blurbro baby girl, but at this point in the series, I've seen nothing that will change my mind. I do, however, fucking love his role in the story as Laios' foil. I guess you could say that I hate him as a person, but love him as a character. Kabru is the opposite of Laios in almost every way. He's exceptionally good with people, a celebrated member of the community, fucking hates monsters, and is constantly playing 5D chess in his head. In another story, he would have more claim to main character status than Laios would, especially thanks to his tragic backstory containing a dead mom and obliterated village. Kabru himself even seems to believe he has some greater destiny involving saving humanity from the dungeon of the Mad Mage, and he's willing to do literally anything to see his goals come to fruition, or to make someone like him.
I do not want to eat that! What do I do to get myself out of this? Maybe I could just kill him. Kill. No, I can't! Thanks, Laios!
Of course.
He'll do literally anything just to get on someone's good side.
This guy's amazing.
Kabru is interesting when compared to the main characters, because he's not really spurred on by any recognisable form of love, at least not thus far. He actually seems to be more spurred on by hatred than anything else. Hatred for monsters, hatred for people he considers bad, hatred for the state of the world and how it allows elves to do whatever they want because, due to their extremely long lifespans, they hold more cards than anyone else. Despite how good he is with people, he doesn't really seem to like people as much as he is fascinated by them. And I think this attitude is best seen when he kills the corrupt revivers.
Humanoids are so easy to deal with. Every single dwarf, gnome, and tall man, they all tend to have identical weak points. They move their bodies in the same way too. It's too bad monsters aren't like that.
The way he stops to marvel about how easy it is to kill people is, if you stop to think about it, kind of fucked up. And none of his party members seem surprised, merely commenting on how it makes sense and it's the right thing to do, implying this is somewhat normal behaviour for him. Of course, his most prominent character trait would be his manipulative tendencies. Kabru is a pro at getting people to like him and is willing to do basically anything to get on people's good sides. He is constantly scheming and analysing the actions and behaviours of those around him, which is probably why he's so ludicrously skilled at deductive reasoning. And you know what? It makes me hate him. I hate how comfortable he is playing people and being completely fake to get what he wants. He reminds me of a former friend, and I want you to picture the word friend in massive bleeding quotation marks. Hell, thus far he's made it incredibly clear to the audience that he's prepared to kill Laios when he stops being useful, and that doesn't exactly endear him to me. That said, and I want you to stay with me on this, I think it's intentional. I don't think we're meant to really like Kabru just yet in this story, because I'm fairly certain his character arc is just starting. Purposefully unlikable characters are a rare art, and I get the feeling he's going to be going through some pretty dramatic character development in the future. Also, I know people ship him with Laios, but aside from the fact that shipping brain is almost a diagnosable malady that's basically terminal, I honestly cannot see a single reason why these two should be a couple, and as someone who's forever on board with gay ships, that's saying a lot. I'm sure most of the people who ship it are manga readers who've already seen the character development happen, but as of now, based off just the anime, ew? I'd fucking ship Laios with Chilchuck before I shipped him with this murder-happy lunatic at this point, but I am looking forward to seeing him develop. Finally, I think it's pretty cool that Kabru's party is entirely made up of foils to the members of the Touden party. The shady but innocent mage to Marcille's actual criminal behaviour, the proud scab to Chilchuck's union boss role, the guy who uses spirits as shields compared to the girl with a murder complex, the dog man to the cat girl, and the dwarf who is also there to Senshi's actual story presence. I don't know, I just think it's neat. I've saved Falin for last because, well, the plot kind of revolves around her, but as a character, she's mostly defined by her absence. The story starts with her being devoured after all, and everything that follows is the party desperately trying to get her back and coping with the fact that she isn't around anymore. And aside from her big martyr moment at the beginning, she spends a lot of the story without any actual characterization. Most of what we learn about her comes from how the characters remember her, and that's mostly her kind nature. We know that she's incredibly empathetic, that she tries to avoid the suffering of others, even ghosts, whenever she can, and that she's a very talented and powerful mage. But outside of the party's obvious love for her, we don't really get anything specific to grasp onto. If they're willing to do this much over the course of saving Private Falin, there must be something about her that they've seen that we just haven't yet.
Whoa, hey!
But indeed, we do get to see what it is that's endeared her so much. We learn that she and Laios became outcasts in their village, partially due to people being weirded out by her natural talent for ghost magic. We learn she's Marcille's best friend from magic school. We learn just how fucking intensely empathetic she is. And we also see just how much the party suffers without her. When Marcille has to try to take her place as the sportcaster, when they have to deal with the ghosts, when Laios doesn't have her around to soften his intensity. Falin is the linchpin of the party, and by the time they're picking her bones out of the dragon and trying to reassemble her skeleton, all you want is for them to just get her back. You're missing her just as much as they are, because you felt how hard it is for them without her. And then it turns out she's just as big a freak as Laios is, and it's great. I honestly really like Falin, and I especially like her dynamic with Marcille. And no, not just because it's soft and gay, but that is a big part of it. That kind of deeply loving friendship, romantic or not, is something I personally adore above all else. Hell, it's kind of exactly how I treat my friends. And I know some people have called Marcille a hypocrite because Falin is just as weird about monsters and eating them as her brother is, and she doesn't yell at her for it. But they're missing the point that Marcille loves Falin more than life itself, and you can forgive a lot of weirdness in the people you love.
Worried for nothing.
This is the worst possible outcome!
I mean, this girl was just as into the idea of eating fishmen as her brother. They are grade A freaky siblings, and I love them. Honestly, more shows need to write siblings that love and support each other without making it all weirdly incestuous. And I include adopted siblings in that, by the way. I cannot tell you how many stories have just turned me right the fuck off them by having the adopted siblings be in love with each other. I mean, fucking ew. Seriously though, Laios and Falin's dynamic is really nice. The way he hugs her, the way he apologizes for making her cold and immediately runs off to get her clothes, and the concerned anger he shows right before they go to bed, it's also breathtakingly heartwarming and I just really love it. Speaking of, I want to give special mention to the bath scene, because it was probably the only bathing scene I've seen in any anime that's just free of the male gaze. The only fan service to be found is in the shipping of these two soft gay idiots, and obviously I'm all for that. The fact that it was allowed to just be a really lovely scene of two friends talking together was just nice. Happy Pride Month, by the way. These bitches gay. Granted, I am horrendously gay myself, so it's possible that there is something here I missed because it definitely wasn't aimed at me, but I like to think it's pretty benign. I've also heard some people claim it's gay baity, and I guess I could see that from a certain angle. I don't know, let me know if you think it's gay baiting in the comments. This is something I need to get better at picking up on. Even as a chimera, Falin still demonstrates an amazing amount of love for her friends, as aside from when she used Stone Edge, which was more of a desperate get these swarming fuckers off me tactic, she didn't attack her party members even once. I really do think Falin encapsulates all of the love types of her friends, and I'm really looking forward to when they find a way to save her again. She's just an enjoyable character I can't wait to see more of. Not like that, shut up. Okay, so since literally no piece of media is above criticism, and we need to learn from the missteps of others since we can't possibly live long enough to make them all ourselves, I do have 3 issues to bring up before the video's over. So if you don't want to hear them, skip to the on-screen timestamp to get to the conclusion and credits. So this show has something of a tone issue, and while it's not the worst I've seen, it still bears mentioning. Meshi, how do I put this? It doesn't feel consistent on the urgency of the rescue, if that makes sense. I mean, in the very first episode, they go from Falin's demise to declaring their intent to rush to the bottom no matter what it takes to slowly moseying through town and debating on whether to grab lunch. Even Marcille seems remarkably unhurried here, which stands in stark contrast to her single-minded determination in later episodes. This issue does get better as the series progresses, but there are times, the most egregious being the living painting side plot, where everything just fucking stops, and they basically forget that Falin is slowly and painfully dissolving in a dragon's stomach right now. Like, I know pushing yourselves and rushing in is only going to get you killed, but there has to be some middle ground you can find. I think this issue is actually at its most pronounced in the resurrection sequence, when they go from the absolutely disturbing discovery of Falin's skull to a light-hearted learning moment with the skeletal reassembly, to a horrifying ritual of boiling blood and tearing flesh and the screaming of the darkness as another worldly power claws in at the fabric of reality in just a matter of minutes. And it's kind of a lot. Secondly, and this is a much bigger issue, the show really likes abusing Marcille early on. The vast majority of the early physical comedy comes at her expense, and she spends a lifetime being screamed at and insulted by everyone around her for basically nothing. Sure, she isn't the victim of fan service, but there are still times it feels like the show revels in her suffering, and while this issue also slowly fades, it can be a lot to get past if you're sensitive to these kinds of things. Finally, we have the Laios issue I mentioned earlier. And that problem is that, thus far in the show at least, Laios is never expected to be better. See, the thing about being autistic is that, while the social and behavioural things that come naturally to the neurotypicals don't come naturally to us, we can still learn it to a certain degree. We just need people willing to sit down and actually explain things to us, and we ourselves need to be willing to put in the effort to grow. The idea that we can't or don't need to is a harmful and infantilizing stereotype that folks like Autism Speaks use to attempt to void our autonomy. And sometimes, and I want to stress that this is by no means the majority, sometimes some autistic people just don't think that they should need to improve. They think that social norms are stupid and that there's no need to try, and that is a terrible mindset to have because all you do is stunt your own growth as a person. And Laios really does need to grow as a person. There are a lot of times that his monster obsession completely overrides any sense of empathy and comes off as legitimately disturbing, and no amount of funny reactions or lighthearted music can fix that. The absolute and infuriating pinnacle of this comes when Izutsumi is stripping and just roll the fucking clip. Dude, that is a teenage girl you are talking about. Seriously, Laios, what the actual fuck? Regardless of intent, the execution makes him sound like a fucking creep. I know a lot of people won't see this as a problem and will probably get angry at me for criticizing him for this, but it legitimately is a problem. Laios needs to be pressed to improve as a person. But yeah, those are the few criticisms I have. I really do love this show. I've always been drawn to stories about love, and this is no exception. The different kinds of love on display, the different ways it's expressed, there's just so much about this anime that I want to gush about, and I absolutely could gush about it for a lot longer, though I'm very much aware of when a video is getting too long. So let me just say that I hope you found something in Meshi to love just as much as I do, and I hope it stays with you for a long time. Stories about love, about kindness and connection, we need these so much as people, because they help remind us to reach out or to tell someone we care, and maybe, just maybe, share a snack or two with them. After all, a meal with someone you love will always taste so much better. Whew, that was a lot to get through. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I had to rewatch the whole of the anime to make this video, but it was a sacrifice I was willing to make, for the sake of my viewers of course. And seriously, happy Pride Month everyone. I've got a video on asexual representation coming soon, so look forward to that, plus more animation and game content coming soon after that. So if you've enjoyed the video and you'd like to see more, why not consider subscribing? It really does help the channel. Also, this video wouldn't be possible without my lovely patrons, with special thanks going to Lustrous Lizard and Owen Oofs for their continued and very kind support. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go make Senshi proud and eat something before I collapse. Thanks again guys, and I hope you have something tasty lined up soon too. Bye.